All right. So we're live. It's ROI Podcast live online. We got a great guest today. We got some funky music. We're feeding the ducks. Our guest, he's from Australia. He had to get up early for this one. So he's having a little coffee. What do you say? Avon, how do you say,
Yes,
how do you say good morning in Australia?
it's really complicated. Ready?
Yes.
Good morning.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it.
um, Although like it's funny. It's not until you get onto a show with someone that's not Australian that you realize how much you say g'day.
Mhm.
It's not always like that common, but it might roll it off. And depended on who you're speaking to. If you got like we're a very multicultural country at the
Mhm.
moment. But yeah, there's some you know very hardcore Aussie kind of people. Yeah, g'day, how you going? And that's the other thing too, is mashing the words together. So how you going? It's like it's one word. How are you going? Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm a Texan, so we do a little bit of the same there. I'll think of some. You'll probably hear some roll off my tongue here as we talk. But Avon, he is one of the founders of Relevate, and they're known for helping folks get together, get their act together as far as business automation, digital transformation strategy, IT, and managed services. So, Avon, tell us a little bit about yourself and why in the world you'd get up so early to be on a podcast and get interrogated by a Texan.
Right. Well, I guess that's an easy answer. So once upon a time, I used to be in the army. So getting up early, like literally, my alarm goes off and I'm on my feet in 2 seconds. Um, that's just like that's the expectation. And then yeah, getting up in the early in the morning to make stuff happen. So we're at I guess a scaling point in our business where I'm very much got a team that I'm working with. They're building doing a lot of the day-to-day management, and I'm going out meeting people and building the next phase and the next phase. And that's something that you can do with building the right systems, having the right SOPs and documentation and things like that. So yeah, so I like to get up early. I stay up late. I go to about 3 or 4 networking events a week. Our pipeline is probably exploding at the moment, but that's a good problem to have. Now I'm getting more salespeople. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at this hour of
Well,
the morning.
awesome. Proud to have you today. So, here's why I wanted to interview you is that you hang out in an area that I see most of my clients struggle with.
Mm,
And, we all started businesses with a dream, but then it starts to turn into like we're trying to fit some aspect of our business operation and managing them in some way in spreadsheets or paper flow or some
mm,
sort of CRM that we purchased, but it doesn't actually talk to our existing system that we had in place. And then
mm,
this one has all the features but this one has those two features but all the same features as the first one. And so it
mm,
starts to be like really confusing and frustrating. How do I get all this stuff to talk together? how do
mm.
i make how do I make my investment pay, and then how do I get my team to adopt it? That seems to be like the three main things. Do you see? I guess that would be the same business problem that exists in Australia as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to write those three down so I don't forget. So getting them to talk,
Hmm.
and the last one was sorry, what?
Getting your team to adopt.
To adopt. Yeah. Okay. So the first problem was that the fact that most people look at the business in function in isolation.
Mhm,
What does every business owner want? More money. How do you get more money? Make more sales.
mhm,
But then they forget a lot of the other things that, can they deliver on that? Can they actually, once they get the sale, can they actually, onboard the client and do whatever they have to do in their business? So there's a whole end-to-end cycle that people tend to, just focus on one area or one area or one area, and they get the shiny thing to solve that one problem. And then the other shiny thing, they like the way it clicks, the way it wiggles, the way something happens on the screen. Maybe confetti falls down. That's
I like
awesome.
I like that one.
That does happen. It now happens in Microsoft when someone writes congratulations in an email. In Outlook, it now goes congratulations with confetti. So, if you're looking at your business in those little bits and pieces. You're going to get the shiny app, but you're not going to look at the fact that all you're doing in business in order to scale is unblocking bottlenecks. So that bottleneck can happen on the front end when it comes to sales. It can happen on the back end when it comes to administration, or anywhere in between. I once had, I implemented something that was awesome for sales, and then I had for one of our clients, and then they begged me to turn this automation off because they'd made so many sales, but now they couldn't keep up with supply. They had staffing issues. They had all these other problems in the back end. I, I warned them about this early on, but they just couldn't comprehend that the fact that they had this front end issue that then flows into this back end issue, and then you get this other problem where you've got these people that really like the simple things, and if they won't work with it unless it looks nice. And then on the other end, you've got these super technical people that want reports, they want data, they want automations, but the happy zone is somewhere in the middle. So you kind of have to look at a whole of business. Then you have to look at, build a business case. Why would you justify from start to finish? And then in order to adopt, you need to take your clients or your staff on that journey, both really. This is what's going to happen, then that's what's going to happen, and involve them and get the feedback. And this is why we've made this decision. And in fact, it makes a better decision. You're not just going on emotion and feeling.
So how do you, sorry, I'm a business person. Well, okay, so I'm dealing with a problem. So how about we do this? Why don't we dissect, what I'm dealing with, and then how you would give us help us envision what it would look like, you coming in and resolving that. So, I've got this process where I can put code on a website. It gives me data. It drops in a spreadsheet. I want it to go into a CRM and follow up. But when all right, I get my client excited about that, I want to onboard them. So I need to send them paperwork that they notify my team, start the next steps. I can envision this automation and Zapier and all these things, but truthfully, I can only get little pieces to work, but I'm not getting the whole system to jive.
Yes.
So how would you, all right, you're going to come in, help me see what that process
First thing I'm going to do is go, forget brand names, forget tools. Let's just talk about the components that we need. So we'd probably draw a workflow diagram. And just say, I need to be able to collect an email address and just dumb it down to the lowest level. I need to be able to send a welcome email. I need to be able to, once they've sent the email, create a task for the team to, maybe give them a call. So it sounds like there is some sales process. So it's going to be a semi-automated system. Document generation. So what are the fields that need to go into the document? You need to collect that in either a form or a way to, in a database, maybe a questionnaire, the salesperson's filling it out. So you need mandatory fields with validation so that they're going to be exact. And then there's a document signing process. So you need a DocuSign or a Hello Sign or anything. And then that needs to be able to send. Then you need to be able to, once that's been sent, have a follow-up tracking process. And then once it's been signed, then that comes back in, triggers the next step. And then now that we've documented the process, now let's start to identify what are your critical requirements. I just have a spreadsheet. All the stuff I'm doing is not that complicated, really. It's scientific in its approach. So down one side, you list what are your critical requirements. It's hard to say. Critical requirements from top to bottom. And down the bottom is your nice to haves. And then across the top, you might have the different systems that do that job or do parts of that job. Where possible, I like to minimize the number of overall systems and minimize the middleware. So whether it's Integromat or Zapier or something else, those are unavoidable at some point. And going custom, then you've got to maintain it. But at least the less middleware, the better. So sometimes it might have a more expensive software. And I'm usually pushing people to spend more on software because that offsets labor cost. So again, I take a very scientific approach to it, and it's not necessarily about the tools. It's more about what are we actually trying to achieve here, because it might take one thing, two things, or one very big thing, or five things. Ideally, less is more because then you have better control. You have more ability to move data around inside a database or a system. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and I've noticed, so I've been running my agency now for, it'll be 11 years here next week. And I've seen this trend towards automation really gain momentum recently, and it's expected in many different businesses other than just
Mm,
marketing agencies or high
mm,
tech agencies. And there's it impacts what you would expect of your employees. It impacts profitability because you're reducing a lot of minutia and repetitive tasks that you would pay someone to do,
mm,
assuming they're in their best moment, they're focused, they're paying attention, they're not being interrupted. There's just this expectation for this automation, even with the topic of AI.
mm,
And so I'm interested in how all right, so you start with a graphic to
mm,
picture how you could reasonably expect data to flow into your organization.
mm,
Okay, so you get that clear with this business.
mm.
All right, now now you evaluate what's in place as far as their technology, what can
Correct.
handle some of those pieces already.
Correct. Yeah. And in that also is that sometimes, yeah, they've got the tools already, they're just not using it properly. Um, so there might be a training element. The other thing too is it could be a process problem. I had one client where they had a front end call team, and the front end call team would take calls and then they would route them to a scheduler. This was like a field service business. And what would happen is they'd drop like 20, 30, 40% of their calls because as it goes to the scheduler, they're either busy, the client couldn't be bothered waiting, maybe the scheduler didn't call back, or that was the bottleneck. That's what I was saying earlier, is that half the problem is just resolving bottlenecks. So what we did is we cross-trained the front team, no implementation of technology whatsoever. We cross-trained the front end call team to do first call resolution. They booked in the quotation as well. It meant a few more software licenses, but they had to double their front end call team and they had to quadruple their back end delivery team. So they basically went from a 30-person company to a 130-person company over the course of 12 months.
Wow.
So that is just because they're paying for Google ads and they were getting good Google ads coming, or good leads coming in, but then they were dropping a significant portion of this, thousands of dollars a month, and then all the work that comes from that as well. So it was just, yeah, process. Let's start at the basics. There's a concept in the military. It's like, be brilliant at the basics. You don't have to be a whiz bang legend at something. If you can just do what you've got to do really, really, really well at the lowest level, then that's a great foundations. We're all about building great foundations because that's what you can, build upon. You're not going to get to the point of you've built a system, you've implemented it, you've put 20,000 lines of data into it, and then you go, oh crap, now we have to migrate into something else, and that's $1 million project. So we tend to think of, what does your business need now in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and let's build with the future in mind, because we know that particularly if you want to grow, what your ambitions are, then you're not going to have to rip and replace every 12 months, or maybe multiple times because you decided you didn't like that platform.
So where do you see the sweet spot for you right now? Who are the early adopters of wanting to get their systems in place? What kind are they? Are there certain trends of business? Do you see
Mm.
patterns?
Oh, look, at this point in time, in Australia's population, we have a stagnating workforce. So if you look at this is a problem 20 years in the making. If you've got lots of birth rates for younger generation, you've got a lot of aged population, but in the middle you've got this working age population. So whilst the population is growing, the working age population is not, which means that there's a lot more work for them to do because a lot of more pressure from the aged care and youth, like education and things like that. Then people don't want to do all the usual jobs, so there's just shortages absolutely everywhere. So automation and even like use of AI and just general tech is a non-negotiable. And in fact, I would imagine that in the next few years, all of the older businesses that are phasing out, the baby boomer era, there's going to be a lot of consolidations. So a lot of companies, buying out other companies and absorbing, or some going broke. just because they're not keeping up. It's like when it's almost like an industrial age. When the iPhone came out, it was probably within about a year or two. Now everyone's got a smartphone. Um, AI in business, it's probably going to be very similar in that in a year or two, it's just going to be everywhere, because we're talking about like a 25% or 30% or 40% productivity improvement that the people that were doing spreadsheets and post-it notes, they're just not going to keep up. So I don't think it's going to be something of choice. Those that are adopting earlier have a better chance of survival as a business, because we all know it's all about survival. And those that are laggards are going to kick themselves in a year or two. I would say that's pretty much the down and dirty.
What surprises you about what businesses? Give me like an example of someone that you didn't expect that would adopt it, but they did, because maybe it's a little bit an outlier or not your typical business that you work with.
Yeah, I think you got like these old fuddy duddies that know it all. Like they're a
Mhm.
little bit maybe you're very stubborn in their ways. They're not the ones who are going to adopt this, and they're the ones that are probably going to be a little bit sorry about it. I know a lot of businesses, small, medium, and large. They're the ones that are like ready to test, ready to try, ready to adopt, and it's all about experimentation. So obviously, you need to test with a little, figure out what works, read into new things. Those innovative business owners are the ones that do adopt. We work a lot with service industries, and it doesn't really matter about size. I've got small businesses that want to do giant things, and we try to provide a pathway for everybody. So we've got some courses, we've got some YouTube videos, and like you, we produce content, and then for those that adopt, for the smaller ones, we can't always work with everybody, but we try to give them like, here's some course material, here's some things that you can do yourself, and then when you get to this point, we can sort of take you to that next level. So um, yeah, I don't really think there's any one mold. There are industries that are behind, real estate, finance. They're the ones that are really sort of dragging the chain. Any kind of like service businesses where they can really see the people cost. They know at the moment with wages going up and mortgages and interest rates that if I can save one person, great. That's that's going to save me 50, 100 grand a year. So that they can really put the value down into the numbers. That's how you get people making decisions.
So I think, people that are listening to this, or people that are considering, maybe their owner of the business or the leader of the organization comes and tells them, we're going to implement more automation. And I imagine that not everybody's all excited about it. They're thinking that they're going to be replaced. What's the best way, or how would you coach that person to think about it with a fresh perspective that would empower them or
Mm.
encourage them rather than discourage?
So I generally, a lot of times people think of these digital transformation as a one-off project. I generally try to build it or a continuous digital transformation, where it's like, we have a developer as a service or a dev team as a service, and so you have a continual approach to just chipping away at things. So really, instead of doing this big bang whiz bang project that's going to implement some giant expensive system and then cut like 50 jobs, that's totally the wrong approach. I think what's better is if like, you first of all, you take that digital strategy. We sort of measure the organization, where they want to head, where they're at now, and then build a bit of a roadmap. Then based on that, you can't afford to do all of the everything at once, or it's just too big, or like, it's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So now that we boil that down into agile sprints, like a few short, roll out a new feature. So it could just be like, all right, so we've got a better payroll system now, or we've got, because it's not always about sales, or it's not all about operations. So maybe we've got a better finance admin process. You just solve a lot of little problems, and overall you genuinely create a change ready organization, because they're constantly adapting. We're improving this process, we're improving that process. You think of your business like a software platform. You have an idea generation machine where people feed tickets and recommendations and requests into the business, and then you can rank it, you can prioritize it, you can give feedback of, yeah, we've already solved that over here, here's the article on how to do it. You've got knowledge management, you've got training. So you build a culture of innovation, of scalability and growth. That's my approach.
Yeah. So I can see that adoption is one of the hurdles when a business leader buys into this and they're going to roll it out
Mm.
into the organization. It's common. That's just the resistance to change.
Mm.
So give us some tips on how you coach companies on how to take advantage or do a better job of rolling out an initiative and getting everyone to get on board.
So one of the first steps is, when you assess where they're at and you build that plan. I like to interview people at top, middle, bottom, and particularly if you've got 20 or more people, that's easy to do. In an organization that's a bit smaller, obviously you just got one or two people, but you get their feedback. You go, what are the roadblocks? What are the things holding you up? What's going to make you be able to move faster and do things better? So it's not always about cutting jobs. It might be making the admin more efficient so you can spend more time on sales, or reduce bottlenecks in the service delivery so that the customers are happier, and then they ask less questions and everyone's like, oh, I'm not stressed anymore. Or like they poke and prod less about the bill or something like that. So then that frees up finance to be able to do more proactive planning and future based stuff instead of reacting to everything. So if you involve them in the problem, then you're solving problems for them as well. There are definitely some fuddy-duddy organizations. Lawyers tend to be always like this. But I think involving them, getting their feedback is good. Sometimes there's a culture problem, and that stems from the top. There's nothing you can do about someone that has a terrible culture from the top. Having said that, the more you can, educate and consult with the team, the more that they're going to feel as though they're being heard. And when that feature rolls out and it solves 10 people's issue, even if it's only small, that's going to have a massive impact. And they're going to be more ready for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
So what's one top software and system that most people can consider that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you?
Oh, that's a dangerous question. And I don't like to answer that without knowing first what technology proficiency, how big, what system they're in, what they're sort of aligned to. Honestly, I would probably say it's either going to be your existing, Google or Microsoft Sphere or whatever, because there's a lot of things in there that people just don't use very well. Maybe there's Microsoft Teams, and then being able to share files, collaborate with externals, have the security. Maybe you upgrade and get like Copilot, and then you've got some more AI stuff in there. There's some whole bunch of stuff in Outlook you can do that can accelerate your work. So I would say learn your existing tools better. That would be the first thing. Is there an app that's the magical all seeing things? I would say not by product, but by type. Do you have a ticketing system in your business? When an email comes in, are you tracking that as a conversation with a follow-up task? Notes, can you collaborate it amongst your team? Is there like knowledge management articles right next to it that tell you how to resolve that, or give you some guides or suggestions or pre-written text? Maybe then later on you could stitch AI into that to then be able to read all of your database and then recommend a response based on what's in there, etc. But yeah, that would be my, well, yes, learn existing systems better. But then the ticketing system is probably my next best recommendation. We use that as our idea generation funnel or innovation pipeline.
So when you say, all right, so excellent, I think that was a great answer. First of all, you've got technology in place that you're already using. Almost everybody either is using Microsoft Office or Google Workspace, whatever they call it nowadays. And both of those systems are being upgraded aggressively already. So there's probably capabilities that exist nowadays that 2 years ago, when you bought into it and started moving in and getting to use it, there's things it can do now that you're not maybe you're not aware of or haven't taken the time to explore. So that's an excellent answer. First, learn your existing system better. Now, when you say ticketing system, do you mean a project management system?
It can flow into that sort of thing. So typically, it's more to do with communication. So like a ticket is, let's just say like a help desk software, right? So someone sends you an email, it raises a ticket. Now, that concept can be applied in a number of areas, like an IT management system. Yeah, that does ticketing, but then there's billing associated with it. There's, an issue comes in, now you can categorize it, assign it, you can give it a, have some private comments in the background. You can use knowledge articles there to help solve it. It doesn't matter what your industry you're in. If you're in any kind of service industry, like obviously if you've got to go get a product off a shelf and give it to someone, or if you've got to, fix a car or something like that, it's not as much the same. But probably most platforms work in that way. Like your project management system, every task, you're manually entering it, but then it's not connected to your inbox. You're like a mechanic shop management system. They've got a task list. Everything's got a status. Everything's got a due date. Everything's got like maybe looking at parts. They're doing some time billing as well. But all of that basically runs off a similar concept. Again, not connected or not always connected to communication platforms. So it might send an email notification saying, "Hey, we've done the job," and then maybe on the next step it might be send an SMS to like come and pick up your car at this time or something like that. Like I said at the start, we do a lot with service industries because they're generally sitting behind the computer. It's more relevant to a lot of them. And in that case, you're looking at a PSA or professional service automation tool or professional service automation software. So a ticketing system is pretty much inbuilt in that an email or a communication comes in, maybe like a pharmaceutical consulting company. Something comes in, we need this reviewed. Okay, great. There's a task. It's billable. It needs to be assigned to a particular department or skill set. Maybe you need to look up who has that skill to be able to handle it. Then you can assign it to them. Then once they've been assigned, there's a due date ticking down on when it has to be done by. There's all the billing rules applied by the client. There's a whole bunch of other, tagging and flagging, and maybe there's multiple people working on that. Now there's a whole responsibility stream. Then when the client goes, "What did you actually do?" Click, run a report. Here you go. Here's a full line by line, every communication we have with you, anything internally that you want to show on there. That's something that's very powerful. And I think a lot of times people go, we don't need that. But in a business, in order for it to scale, you need to track more stuff and not have it get in the way. So it needs to be able to be used effectively. And then all your data points are kind of naturally flowing out of that rather than forcing someone to go through a whole new process that's completely separate, where they have to then manually enter this and enter that and enter that. If it's all driven off the user, and what I mean by that is it kind of has to blend into the flow of doing the work, not be an additional task. Otherwise, it's not going to get done.
Yeah, I see that. In my area, I'm getting new opportunities that are showing up from different places. And I'm having to figure out, all right, this came in my inbox, great, but then name needs to go over to contact record, the email needs to go over there need to be acknowledged. And then who's going to do it? That's usually like, oh my gosh, I got to hire another person. No.
So you kind of like in the army, you've got this thing called webbing, right? It's all your ammunition. And I know that there's plenty of people who have guns in Texas. So you set up your rig so that it's quick and easy to reload and do the next thing, right? So you don't want to have to go and like reach over there and do stuff. So then you need the tools to work where you are. You need them to flow well with the way that you do work. So you need that seamless thing. If it's an additional chore, it's not going to happen, like what you were saying before. So, you could maybe have something that embeds into Outlook so that it'll automatically read the email, pick up half the detail. You just add like an additional couple points, hit save, move on to the next one. So creating low drag and low effort to capture information. The other one, I love OPE, other people's effort. Send a link to a form, fill out the form goes in, creates task, does next step. That's really great, because now the data's in the format that I want it. It's not in some random unstructured method, and it's just a lot easier to manage.
Yeah. So, all right. You know, this seems to me that if I was an employee at some point in the organization, I I would want to take advantage of automation because I think it starts to make you more important because you're getting to focus on things that automation can't do, make
Mm,
decisions,
mm.
maybe be more like understand a conversation from a client. You can spend more time with clients. What are other little areas that you see that employees have gone from maybe shackled to a
Mhm.
bunch of repetitive things to all of a sudden gaining responsibility and becoming more valuable?
I would say immediately, what about the employee experience? Because if they're going to come into an organization, the first thing they're going to do is go, how do I do, my job? And the longer that takes, the less happy they're going to be with their employment, and more likely they are to bounce, the more expensive they are because they're less effective. So, in order to get them to feel like they're kicking goals from day one, it could just be that you have an onboarding course. So, as soon as they join, there's maybe a form that they fill out, they put in all their details. They've filled out their own like payroll setup, so they know that there's no animosity of when they wrote on that paper form that somebody else had to then go and fill it out. The two looks like a seven, and then their pay was delayed because you got their bank account number wrong. And then on top of that, they get better communication. It happens faster. They can put in their unavailability time. Then when they're onboarded, they get an online course which takes them through. This is the company. This is what we stand for. This is what we don't believe in. This is what we're doing and why. And then from that, then when they sit down at the desk and they've got a bouncing ball to follow with everything structured, information structured, they know where to find things. That experience for them makes them go, wow, I can actually get an outcome here, rather than sit there for the first 30 days feeling like I'm still like drowning in new information. So that in and of itself on the employee experience side. But then, like just being able to find information quickly, knowing who to talk to, because you could search that in a database, having answers to questions really quickly. Maybe there's a knowledge article about it, um, and then they feel more effective anyway. Then when they feel like they're doing a good job, they're going to work harder at doing a good job, because then they're going to enjoy their job. Then they're going to get better results, and you're again going to get your bang for buck in their salary. So, I almost feel it's a no-brainer. I've answered that question from an employer's perspective rather than the employee's perspective,
Mhm.
but I still think that's probably one of the most important elements.
So what's all right, I get some automation in place. Where should I be looking next for an uplift or an improvement now that I've got some freed up time, right?
Yeah. So exponential growth curve. Okay. So you've got your graph, and then it's like starts small and then it skyrockets. That skyrocket at the end is comparative to where you started on the graph. At no point do you actually do anything more amazing. It's a whole lot of little things. There's not going to be one magic bullet that's going to absolutely transform, although some will be bigger than others. But quite often you need to work up to that. Everyone's too busy fighting the fire, too busy treating burns to put out the fire. So everyone's going, I'm so busy, I need to do this. But instead, if they dedicate, you know, an hour a week, 2 hours a week, trying to build something to save themselves time in the future, that exponential growth curve will pick up, and it'll probably be a little bit further down. So the first thing I always say is get a password manager, right? You save yourself 5 minutes a day. Then you've got 5 minutes to invest in doing the next thing. Maybe it is then writing some procedures. Then spend another 5 minutes a day, now you've got 10 minutes a day, looking to solve the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. Create a culture of continuous innovation, and that growth curve will those big gains, once you've got more time to dedicate to a bit of a project, will then result in very significant improvements in your ability to automate things. Maybe you write an email automation sequence welcoming your customer. Now you have 2% better conversion rate. So now you've got more customers. Now you've got to look at, like we're at the point where about 2 months ago, we hired someone, and I haven't met them for the first 2 weeks. So I wasn't involved in the hiring process. I didn't know who they were. And then about a week and a half, 2 weeks into it, I finally got around to having a meeting with them and going, hey, nice to meet you. This is one of our staff. So that's a scary moment when you're hiring people and you've never met them before. But if you've got the systems in place, if you've got the structure, if you've pre-planned your org chart and all that sort of stuff, then you're going to be able to do all of these automation scaling things. But it's never ever one giant thing and a massive change. It's a whole lot of little things that build up to a very big change over a period of time. Kaizen, 1% improvement every day is more than 65% because it's compounding. That's how I would think about it.
So what's one part of your system or what you're preaching was hardest for you to implement for yourself?
Geez, that's a hard question because we're so ready to aggressively adopt all of these things. But having gone from a sole operator to now a team of 20, and now looking at some very big and scary projects, someone's asking us to set up a call center for them with 50 staff. That's going to, more than double us again. So now I would say just aggressively spend time on making those small improvements. You'll come across new challenges as things move. Like I said, there's no one thing. Not only for the business, but even for me, there's no one thing. Probably for the last, so we acquired another business late last year, and we smashed the two together. We did a big change of the help desk system that this IT company was using, and migrating all the customers into the new one. We kind of just ripped the Band-Aid off and made it happen. Now we've got the two companies integrated together. We've got the we set up an Indian office, and we've got them set up. So we built a whole thing. So just blaze a trail of construction or destruction or whatever, and just make stuff happen. Don't be sort of sitting there going, which one is going to work for me? Like, obviously, do a bit of due diligence planning, and then just do. Like, the more you hold back, the more you're going to be held back, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I've seen that automation is a one area that can be a really big help or boost for a business to be more efficient, effective. Also, what you call maybe dispersed teams or offshore teams can be another great resource as well. What's another area that most people need to consider?
I would really look at documentation and knowledge management, having a procedure guide. But the big thing is everybody does it in some kind of document, which is a little bit crappy. You put it in a Word doc, you put it in but then you put it in a folder, and then that folder is somewhere in your ecosystem. Maybe it's not easy to find in terms of naming conventions, and someone has to know it's there. Like if a tree falls in the woods and no one knows about it, does it make a sound? So you're probably better off to put it in a searchable kind of format. That's why I use the ticketing system, because that's usually got a knowledge base in it. And I found one day that I used to have a cafe, and after the first 30 days in this cafe, I'd not had one day off. I was working 12, 15-hour days. I was buggered. And I got my one day off, and at 5 a.m. I get a phone call, coffee machine's leaking. Great. So I got up, got dressed, went there, and it was a button. Click. The continuous flow button had been pushed. So then they said, I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, great. So I filmed a video on my phone how to solve that problem and all the other little problems that could happen and how to fix them. After I did that, and I even saved that to YouTube as an unlisted video, and then I had that link saved to my phone so I could text it next time. So then next time it happened, a month later, because we had a bit of a staff turnover early on after we bought it, I then sent them the text, and then they said, "All right, great, I've fixed that. Thank you very much." But they're still working me up. So then I looked and found a knowledge base, and then I put that in there, and then I said, "This is your place for all questions." So I put the video in there. Also did a whole bunch of other stuff, like how to do the banking, how to do you know, some of the food ordering or any of that sort of stuff. And that stopped pretty much all of my calls at 5:30 a.m. Most things could be solved in that. Then I put a task management system in place where, you know, certain things had to be done by a certain time. And if they weren't done, I had to follow up. So then I got like, because I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my watch, like this should have happened by now. And then on my, now I've got the task management system. I go bling, it pops up, bling, they've done this, bling. Because some things it's not always, you know, sometimes it's every fortnight. It's not always the same person on shift. So we have that shared responsibility to achieve X. But the task management system had the schedule and it would all pop up. And then on that day, they would be able to see, all right, this is what I've got on today. Mark it off. And they have to fill out a form. And the form said, I have done this, I've ordered that much, and this is what I've requested. And I just kept getting updates. And I never had to ping them. They always constantly feeding me the information. And then I could just get on with doing 10 times other things. So that's was probably, like I said, think concepts, don't think platforms. Think what is it that's going to save you time, energy, money, etc. That's going to be the thing. Like everyone's looking for the one golden platform, but look for the one golden result that you need, and it might just be more information. It might be, you know, self-service information for your customers or for your staff. But yeah, knowledge articles are probably my number 3.
That's excellent, because I always see businesses when someone leaves the organization and the time it takes for the new person to get up to speed, there's a decrease in customer service and a frustration that happens because the handoff doesn't happen smoothly. So excellent tip. All right. Eamon, you've been an excellent guest on the ROI Online podcast. What's the best way? Let's say that I'm down under and I'm listening. I want to contact you. What's the best way to contact you?
So if you go to relevate.com.au, that's our website. And then there's a little button there if you're interested. There's like a digital readiness assessment. So you scroll down just a little bit, and then you can take a little test and then figure out how you're going. There's a score, no commitment to leave your email address or whatever. Just click in, figure out how you're tracking. You know, how do you track your customers? How do you do this? How do you do that? That might be a little bit of an interesting exercise for you.
Awesome. So if they want to follow you, do you like post somewhere on a regular basis?
I'm really focusing on my YouTube at the moment. So if you go to @Relevate, so RELEVATE, it's the globe with the green rocket. We've got tons of videos on different software programs with demos that we've done, episodes like this, lots of digital transformation gold in there, some LinkedIn tips, you name it, it's in there. So the idea is that all businesses need all things. So we try to provide a little bit of advice each and everywhere we can.
Yeah, good job. This is a timely topic. It's something that's really necessary. Folks need to be, business folks need to really be getting their systems in place, because business isn't easy.
No.
And these little things can help you through some hard spots.
Well, you know, it's great to sort of come on the show, and my one hope is that, you know, we make someone's life better just by, you know, they listen to us and they get educated. You know, whether or not anyone works with me, I don't actually care. If I could do what I do for free, I would. I absolutely love what I do. That's why I'm up all hours doing it. And you know, I know the pain of, you know, being there for 12-hour days, 16-hour days, and just like banging your head against the wall. Why can't I make this happen? And it's sort of like we just always wanted to make everyone's life easier. You know, Relevate means lift, raise, lighten. So that's what I want everybody to feel. And I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you.
Yeah, this is great. I appreciate you very much. And that's a wrap.